Can you identify a significant challenge you've had to overcome in your organization? It could be even trying to save the organization, and how you were able to do it.
It's, Ron, it's a good question, and I want to sort of respond to it by also responding to some of Paul's comments. I think, I would agree with Paul in a lot of ways, but it ties back to your question, because I think one of our biggest challenges as an organization has been around how do we not be a Band-Aid? How do we move from being something that is this redirection solution to something that's more productive and digs deeper. Anyone who knows me knows I'm an advocate for moving away from food banks and canned food and free food. I'm one of those critics, and yet I started an organization that redirects that excess. And while we don't want to glorify that, we want to get that work done in the meantime. But I think really thinking critically about how we do that is important. It's why we don't give tax receipts to vendors that ask for them. It's why we make sure that we're not awarding waste. And so, I think on the political side too, it's why I'm fairly vocal and really politically active. And if we go back to Ron's suggestion around affordable housing, I sit on an affordable housing board here in Calgary, and I think, the push at a board level is to go from emergency shelters to more long-term affordable housing and different types of solutions that give people choice. And you can really liken that to the food system. Like those basic needs we have treated, really unfairly over the last few decades. And so, how do we move the needle on that while still, addressing our reality? I will say, from a food excess perspective, there are some smaller and medium sized vendors who we primarily work with, that get the metrics on the food that they're, donating to us. And because of that, they start reducing the amount of food because they now have this data that they can work with, which I think is an important thing to pull as a nonprofit to give to an organization. So I will lastly just agree with Tanya that people are also a challenge. I think pre-COVID, food organizations were not working together. We were all working in silos. And when COVID hit, it was full-on crisis mode for a lot of the food systems players. And it was the first time in 8 years that we had been invited to kind of come together and talk to each other. And so I think getting past that, it'd be a double tragedy if we learned nothing from COVID, and getting past that and working together, I think is something that we need to take forward.